Hello everyone, today we'd like to introduce the film It's in the Hole to you. This is our outline. Now let's begin. It's in the Hole is a classic noir film by the world-famous director Billy Wilder. He is a famous Jewish-American film director, screenwriter and producer who is good at film noir. This film is a typical film noir with a style of filmmaking characterized by such elements, such as cynical heroes, stark lighting effects, frequent use of flashbacks, intricate plots, and an underlying existentialist philosophy. The genre was prevalent mostly in American crime dramas of the post-World War II era. The film is based on real news and tells the story of a journalist who made a profit by fabricating fake news that led to tragedy on the screen. This film revealed the distorted and deformed situation of journalism industry at that time.
This film starred Kirk Douglas. This is a very malleable actor. He's acted in comedy, he's acted hero, he also acted as an unscrupulous journalist in our film. In this film, the actor has successfully created an image of a journalist who had high professional ability, but violated the moral bottom line. The director of the film adopted the dark tone photography style that he had always been good at in his film. In addition, this film also used light to create a vivid and three-dimensional shape of the inner changes of the characters. For example, the directors used a lot of fronts and side lighting for the protagonist. This dramatic lighting method can reflect the protagonist's entanglement between good and evil. He was a very professional journalist, but driven by capital and money. He could do things that went against the bottom line of the morality. At the end of this film, the protagonist died of blood loss and fell to the newspaper office. His face completely melted into the darkness, which fully demonstrated the character's tragic ending. Similarly, the lights are also dimmed when the poor man in the hole died because he missed a perfect line to be rescued because of the protagonist's selfish desires. The director gave the poor characters a shot with only half of his face exposed and the other half of his face melted into darkness, which further embodied the bleak death of the poor man and the cruelty and the malice of the hero, the unscrupulous journalist. So, the unscrupulous journalist died like the poor man in the hole he killed. And this scene is also a scene we like very much, because this scene seems to imply the tragic fate of those who try to gain profit from other people's pain. We think the most valuable aspect of the film is the relevance of the theme to today. Self-interest through the suffering of others happened not only in the journalist in the 1940s and the 1950s, but all around us all the time. We still live in an age where thinking is detected by the mass media. Only one of the dark sides of the journalist is that exaggerate figures, description, deep empathy, and so on. They are all truths that the journalists use to attract the audience. Unscrupulous journalists act out when people want to hear sensational pain and aggravate the pain of others. And we, as readers, may become the accomplice in many cases. For example, after Russia invaded Ukraine, some newspapers described the war as just for the sake of click-through rate, attendance rate, and grandstanding, which undoubtedly completely violated the moral bottom line of a journalist. When we are curious and interested in such exaggerated news content, we undoubtedly contribute to the frequency of such news and provide a broad market for such fake news. All in that, we believe that the theme of this film is still very much instructive today.
Next, we are going to show our favorite clip from the film, which is also the main storyline of the film that is about the protagonist who breaks the reef and foreman to make the news more compelling and ends up killing himself and the poor man trapped in the hole.
How's this, Sheriff? Tomorrow I'll have your name all over the paper. The man who rushed here at the first cry for help to direct the rescue operations. By Tuesday, everyone in the state will know you. Gus Kretzer, the tireless public servant who never spares himself. I'll pile it on every day. 6 days of this, and I'll make you a hero. The election's in the bag. In the bag, the guys running against you will vote for you.
Okay, I'm a hero. What do I make you?
Now, here's the deal. The way things look, there's going to be other newspaper men trying to horn in on this story. A lot of them. Maybe all the way from New York. This is my story. I want to keep it mine. You're going to help me.
Loan him.
How long?
Well, Gus, I can't tell you exactly, but I don't see how we can do it under 16 hours. Well, maybe I could do it in 12 hours if I send for a second crew, although some of the men don't want to work on account of that jinx you wrote about.
Suppose we set up a drill on top of the mountain and go straight down.
Cut through all that rock? Do you know how long that would take?
You tell me.
6, maybe 7 days. It's a great big job.
Have you got any drills like that?
Yes, sir, but it's not necessary. Once we get that back part shored up, I think...
You're thinking too much. Let Mr. Tatum do the thinking.
But he's all wrong. I think...
You're thinking again, Sam. A few years ago, you was a truck driver. Now that I'm sheriff, you're a contractor. Do you want to be a truck driver again?
All right, Gus. If that's the way you want it, I'll set the drill. But that fellow in there... 7 days.
I know what's in your mind, Mr. Small, and it does you credit. Leo's a rugged boy. The doctor told me that himself. And he'll get the best of care. So don't worry. Sugar?
Hey, how about some cigarettes?
How'd you like to make yourself $1,000 a day, Mr. Boot? I'm $1,000 a day newspaper man. You can have me for nothing.
We edit it to reflect as much as possible within the 3-minute time limitation, the full story of events, and the subject matter of the film noir satire. We think this film, despite its age, is still highly valuable. In fact, the film failed at the box office that year because it was boycotted by the social news industry, but it owns Oscar for Best Screenplay. In 1952, the content of the film still has valuable warning significance, even today after 70 years. If it were 10 stars, we'd like to give this film 9 stars. The reason we didn't give 4 marks is that we have some different opinions about the role of the wife. About this aspect, we will show the details in the second half of our film review. In fact, we really dislike this role and the film's portrayal of this role in this film. This character in Juno gives us a very abrupt feeling. From the plot and setting point of view, the role of the wife is indeed a cruel role, but she seems to take on too many identities, as well as labeled with stereotypes of women in many noir films in the last century. She's rarely beauty. She doesn't care about her husband's life or death. She dislikes the poor and loves the rich. There is only money in her eyes. She's beautiful and romantic, immoral, and she has an extramarital affair with the protagonist. In the end, things came to the light. She had a huge conflict with the protagonist and finally killed the protagonist. We admit that the wife is an important role in promoting the development of the story in almost every important plot and setting, but she also assumes too many identities, which makes this role very abrupt and too bad. We observed a lot of the same types of films from that area and found that almost all of them had the same problems. There are generally very few female characteristics in these films, and almost all of them are almost identical to the multi-identity and emotional image of the wife in the film we selected. This kind of image is generally called femme fatale. We believe that this kind of image formation has inadvertently deepened people's stereotypes, reduced the fullness of female images in film works, and made the images of female characteristics appear very abrupt in this type of film.
Ace in the Hole is indeed a very ironic story about journalism. Shocked by Tatum, the protagonist of the film is a journalist who is proficient in news writing and selling news story, but he has no professional ethics and the backside of morality. From these fictional characters, we can learn a lot about journalism while drawing a lesson from his story. The first lesson we learn from this film is that a good journalist should have strong news sensitivity and be able to actively find newsworthy stories. According to our reading material, curiosity is a natural part of most people's characters and a vital ingredient for any journalist. If a journalist wants to find a news story, he or she should have curiosity and thirst for knowledge. In the film, Chuck Tatum was a man of curiosity. On his way to a local match, he saw a police car passing by and sensitively felt that there might be something newsworthy happening. Therefore, he became the first one who discovered the newsworthy story. The second lesson is that a good journalist should know what kind of story he or her audience are interested in. To attract more audience to read our news story, we need to know what our audience want to read most. In the film, Chuck Tatum summarized what kind of news story the audience prefer to read through his early experience as a newspaper seller. He found two rules that I think may still apply today. The first rule is that bad news sells better. The second rule is that audience pay more attention to individuals' experience and stories. In fact, the news story he reported a man checked in an Indian tomb made two rules Chuck mentioned. It was an individual tragedy, therefore audience in the United States loved this story. In fact, in the real world, this rule still work too. Just take the European War as an example. Among all the stories about European War, the stories about individual tragedies such as a penguin woman shot in the hospital by the Russian army attract more attention and impress people the most. The third lesson is that a good journalist should be able to deal with people and quickly gain the trust of others. According to our reading, a good journalist should be able to get on well with all sorts of people. When a journalist investigates a news story, he or she always has to deal with all kinds of people to get information. In the film, Chuck was proficient in the skills of dealing with others, so he could quickly gain the trust of the parties involved in the event and obtain the materials for writing news story. The last lesson is that a good journalist should adhere to his professional ethics. In the movie, although the protagonist could write popular news stories, his news was based on deceiving the audience and ignoring the lives of others in order to obtain greater benefits. The original intention of the profession of journalist is to influence the audience and urge the society to become better through news writing. However, in order to write a story that the audience like to read, he interfered with the decision-making of the rescue team and eventually lead to the death of one person, which eventually lead to his career failure. As a journalist, we should avoid acting like shark.
At the end of this film, the protagonist dies in his office and pays heavy price for his behavior and profit-driven desire. As we mentioned earlier, the film's topic is still valuable even in today's society. Self-interest through the suffering of others happened not only in journalism in the last century, but all around us all the time. As communication students, we must always pay attention to our responsibilities and ethics so as to maintain a pure line of journalism. This is our reference page. That's all about our presentation of the film Is in the Whole, and thank you so much for your watching and listening.